Welcome to Inside Amusements, your number one podcast about yesterday, today, and tomorrow's amusements, with your hosts, Brian, Chris, and Eric. I'm Joe, the producer, and this is episode number 7. Insert coin to play. And now, here's Chris.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. We're going to start off with some news here. So kicking things off, track has started to show up at SeaWorld Orlando for their rumored surf coaster, or they're calling it I've heard them calling it a landscaping project. So they haven't announced anything yet, but they have shared pictures of the track showing up. So check back for more details on that surf coaster.
Heck yeah. We're excited for that. Coming up this month on May 25th, just remember that the Kenobi miniseries is going to drop on Disney+. We are all big fans of Star Wars here at the Inside Amusements crew, so I know all of us are really excited for that one. Chris, come on, man. Chris, if you're watching this on YouTube, Chris just made a face, so maybe 3 out of 4. I don't know. But
yeah, I'm going to say 3 out of 4. You'll have to get me to watch them to get into that. But yeah. Anyway, moving on. Also, more coaster news. You know, I'm the coaster fanatic, as we all are, but that's my go-to passion. Defiance at Glenwood Caverns, the Gerstlauer Infinity Coaster. They started going vertical on that, and it looks amazing. The drop going down the cliff. If you can Google it, you Google the picture of it. It looks awesome.
Nice, man. And last off for the news in more TV shows, on May 27th, the first volume of Stranger Things Season 4 comes out. So they're actually going to release this season in 2 volumes. So if you're a big fan of Stranger Things, I absolutely love that show. I'm really looking forward to that. May 27th, first volume coming out. And that's going to be all for this trip around the news carousel.
Hey guys, thanks so much for the news. I'm super excited for Kenobi, as well as Stranger Things, 2 of kind of my favorite stuff going on right now. Insert coin to play. It's the name of this episode. And I think most everyone will immediately know what we're referring to when we say that. And that is, of course, meaning video games. Specifically, that was a reference to, putting a quarter in the arcade video game. But the Atari 2600 was, as most people know, was a home video game console. And it was released in 1977. And that was my first experience ever with playing video games. I guess I must have been somewhere around about 6 years old, maybe just a few years after the 2600 was released, when my family purchased the console. And at that time, we only really had a few game cartridges. It were the ones that actually came with the system when you bought it, including the joysticks and it had paddle type controllers. And if you had the 2600, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But I remember playing games like Missile Command and Super Breakout, of course, Asteroids. And, occasionally we would buy new games, or, I'd get them as presents for, like my birthday or Christmas. And, some of my favorites in regards to the 2600 console were like Space Invaders. Pitfall was amazing. And Adventure, and of course, Pac-Man. And I spent hours playing these games. And my brother and sister and I would all kind of play against each other, and all the neighborhood kids would come down. I mean, you talk about like one of the coolest experiences ever. First time playing a video game, and no less playing it at home and in your living room. So yeah, really cool stuff.
Yeah. And not to mention with speaking of your brother, we just want to make sure that everybody's aware that Brian's still around, but he's out doing something, getting ready for Coaster Stock that's this weekend. So we wish him all the best. Actually, we're all going to be there, but he's got some extra things he's got to do. So that's why he's not with us today. But going back to Atari, that was my first gaming system as well. And some of my favorites, my absolute favorite was Dungeons and Dragons. That was amazing, as well as Pitfall as well. I would spend, countless hours with Pitfall and Dungeons and Dragons and also Pac-Man. That really got me into video games. So.
Yeah, and I kind of even remember after that, I think like another console that comes to mind, and I'm not sure the timeline on this, but I remember ColecoVision dropping something. There were, other types of consoles that were coming out a little bit later. One that comes to mind, I think it might have been ColecoVision, but they made a kind of a mini arcade version of one of the games. Yeah, and it was almost like the coin operated, but it was just a very small little miniature one. Had a little joystick on it, but I kind of remember having those too.
Yeah. And after Atari for me is, it might have been a year or two after that is when the original Nintendo came out. Mm-hmm. And that was Super Mario Brothers, Duck Hunt, all that kind of stuff. Just hours and hours. Gauntlet was one of my favorites.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
What about you, Eric?
I was going to say, I remember growing up, probably my first experience with video games was either with a Game Boy, or it would have been at a place like there used to be this place in Cincinnati called Family Fun Center, which is kind of like old school, like Dave and Buster's or Scene 75. And so going and actually playing on the machines. Some of my absolute favorites on those were going to be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh yeah,
right. Absolutely love that. Pac-Man. There was a Terminator game too, which was a lot of fun.
The Simpsons.
The Simpsons. Yep. That was great. But yeah, either, going there or starting with like a Game Boy and just having Mario or Mortal Kombat. That was probably kind of one of my first experiences doing arcades or video games.
The technology. Yeah. Mortal Kombat. The technology then, of course, being like 8-bit. And Super Mario Brothers, Pac-Man, all that early stuff, all in 8-bit. And I think 8-bit went for quite a long time because you said Game Boy, and that was up until kind of the late 80s even. And I actually have over here on my shelf, I've got a small portable Atari game system that's about this size with a little screen on it. And I think it has every single Atari game loaded into it. And then that's Sega Genesis as well. It's the same size, just a small little portable thing. But even today, man, I get such joy out of playing those games. And it doesn't matter that they're 8-bit. I think that just adds to the whole, experience that I had at the very first time playing video games.
Yeah.
So no complaints there.
No, and after the NES, then you mentioned it, the Sega Genesis, that kind of got us a mixture of 8-bit and then a little bit of what was coming next.
Yeah,
especially with like Sonic the Hedgehog. Mm-hmm. I just remember playing that forever.
We had the Super Nintendo, and actually my favorite video game of all time is still Donkey Kong Country. Mm-hmm. When it was on the Super Nintendo. So, and I have kind of like Joe said, like I've got a little mini version. It doesn't have all of the Super Nintendo games on it, but I bought it thinking, all right, this is gonna be fun. I'm gonna play all these games again. I still just play Donkey Kong Country. Like I think I got it for like $90, and it's like, man, that's some of the best $90 I've ever spent.
Did you ever have an Atari 2600, Eric?
No, never had that.
Ever play one?
Not the real one.
Mm-hmm.
Like I played the games on, little other devices, but never had the original one. I'm too young for that, man.
You can look around online. They have emulators and stuff like that you can play.
Yeah.
Just Eric, you always said you're young, but you're only 3 years younger than me, and I had one. What can you say?
Young enough.
What can you say?
What can you say? But talking about Super Nintendo, and that was one of my all-time favorite gaming systems ever. Still to this day, I have my original that still works. But some of those games that I would love to play on was Star Fox and NBA Jam. Me and my dad would just go for hours playing NBA Jam.
Man,
Boom shakalaka.
Yep.
Yeah. From downtown.
Yeah. He's on fire.
He's on fire. Yeah. I remember playing NBA Jam. I remember playing NBA Jam in the arcade, as a coin operated. Mm-hmm. And man, I'd have to research on what year that was, but I totally remember being there. I remember like that being one of the most popular games at the time. Mm-hmm. You always knew which one was the popular one because they moved it right up front. And so, a big crowd of kids would be around playing that. But man, that was so fun playing that game.
I actually just before we moved into the new place, I actually broke out the old Super NES and played NBA Jam.
Nice.
Yeah.
I remember, I think Legend of Zelda was probably one of my, I think that was Super Nintendo. That was one of my most favorites for sure. Yeah.
I think that one of those games, I think it was the one, there was a few for Super NES, but one of them got voted like all-time best video game. It was one of the Zelda games. I can't recall for which. I think it was for NES, Super NES, but I'm not sure which. I think there was a couple that might have been released for that system.
Zelda's still really popular.
Yeah.
I think they have a movie out of it too, and it's
It might have one of the biggest fan bases of video games, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Now I go back and I play them and I'm like, how do I figure, where am I going? What am I doing in this game? And then I'm like, oh shoot, like this was made for a kid and I can't figure it out. Like they're so fun, but they were challenging. Like all of them were challenging. You know?
We're wired differently as adults now.
Yeah.
Man, so many great video games. I can't even begin to tell you. I mean, there must be 100 video games that I loved throughout the years.
Yeah. And it kind of makes me wish that, arcades and stuff were still around, but they kind of, I guess you could say, just morphed into these family fun centers where you have other things you can do as well. Putt-putt, go-karting, that kind of stuff, where you have like Scene 75. And up here in Columbus, we have Magic Mountain. And then the places that you mentioned down there in Cincinnati, they just kind of morphed into that whole entire family atmosphere where we can bring everybody. And then you have your video games, you have your, the ball pits or whatever the kids jump in and that kind of stuff. But I would like to see just a classic arcade pop up somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. There used to be one near Cincinnati. I've not been there, but I've heard people talk about it, where they had a whole bunch of different classic arcade games, and you could pay by the hour. You could pay like, $5 or $10 an hour and be able to play all of them.
I don't know why I just said that, because there are places up here that it's called 16-bit.
I was going to say,
there's 2 bars up here, 2 or 3 that you just go in. All the games are free. You just, buy your drinks or whatever while you're hanging out. And there's hundreds of our old arcade games here.
Yeah, I think we have one of those in Cincinnati.
Games, all the video game systems on walls of TVs that you could ever think of.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah. I don't know why I didn't think of that.
Yeah, I think Joe, we have one in Cincinnati too, right?
Yeah, we do. And I just kind of looked it up. It looks like there's a bunch of them just kind of around the country, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as a kid, man, it was one of the coolest things ever. That was the place to be. I would save up my allowance or my lunch money, and have all the quarters. I remember like my grandfather, I remember him saving up quarters for me just to give them to me because he knew that I would play these video games.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, even after arcade, as a kid, of course, other consoles came out where you can play at home. I'm trying to think. I mean, like PlayStation. It seems like as a maybe young adult, when that came out. I'd have to look that up to see exactly when that came out, but it feels like that was kind of the next, like as a young adult, that was the game system that I had.
Yeah. I think that jump up from me, it was Sega to the PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
And those were some classic games on PlayStation. I didn't have one very long because I got one kind of later after they were out, and then the PlayStation 2 came out, and that's when I got one of those. And those were some fun games. I actually got into playing like NCAA football, that kind of stuff, when I got my PlayStation 2. So, and then they stopped making those games, sadly. But I think they may be coming back.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I'm not much of a. I'm not much of a. No, it's okay. I'm not much of a sports. I've never really played. I mean, the NBA Jam was awesome. I remember playing track and field at the arcade. It had the two buttons that you could run and do your jump and everything. It was super competitive, but I didn't really get into like later on in years. I didn't get into like the Madden football and stuff like that. I probably played them, but never really liked them. I'm not really a big sports person anyways, but
yeah.
We had in our neighborhood, it seemed like everybody had a Nintendo 64.
Oh yeah.
And there's some great games on the 64. And when that, you see that 64-bit, I mean, that was big.
Yeah.
But what I remember was really cool about that is the Nintendo 64 had 4 places for controllers. And so like in my neighborhood, it was like, okay, whose house are we going to hang out at? And you go and knock on their door. Hey, is, so-and-so here? Like, are they home? Do you want to play GoldenEye? Do you want to play Mario Kart?
Mario Kart.
I was going to say Mario Kart. Still huge today. I mean, we've got Nintendo Switch and Mario Kart is a favorite here at home.
Oh, it's a huge. But that was just fun, like, because then you're hanging out with your friends and you're, competitive with each other, but you're still having a good time. And, now that's obviously changed because everybody just plays online. But I remember, you're kind of you're having fun. And of course, we'd always have, all the best snacks, right? Doritos, Jones sodas, Mountain Dew. I mean, Sour Patch Kids, like you name it, we were snacking on it and just having a great time playing. Oh my gosh, like another fantastic game was Super Smash Brothers. You play it for hours and hours.
Yeah, and I was going to mention, like, talking about, and then from the Nintendo 64 and having 4 players where you can play all the time with your 4 people is then evolving into the original Xbox where you could have LAN parties. Yeah. And that's when, I don't know about anybody else, but Halo, the original Halo game.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
You'd gather everybody in all different rooms of your house connected. You have wires running across your whole entire house connecting who knows how many Xboxes, and you're all just playing that all night long. And that's one of my fondest memories, actually, of like my sophomore and senior years of high school.
Yeah, I got into Halo. I wasn't as big as like some people where you talked about getting together with everybody, bringing their console and stuff like that. But I mean, I played it for hours, just with a friend or something, and went on to play some of the others. But that that was some years later, of course, early 2000s or later. But yeah. So today, do you still play? Do you have a video game console at home today, Chris?
I do. I have many. I have a few, but the main one I use is my Xbox One S, the Slim, where me and Brian, we actually still play almost, every other night, every couple nights, a few nights a week, we play Call of Duty Warzone. So if anybody out there plays, you can message us for our gamer tags. We can get down on some Warzone with you.
I actually thought about getting back into it. So I might even consider doing that. Now we have a PlayStation here, PlayStation 4, I think, and a Switch. And, I don't play it as much as I used to, but, yeah, I mean, I think if I had more time, but for me, I think that's probably where I would be. I think I could definitely be the gamer that I used to be.
Yeah, I definitely play kind of at the end of the night. Wife goes to sleep. Then I'm just kind of relaxing. When it's just me, when we're not playing Call of Duty, I'll play some baseball, or some hockey or football. I like sports.
Nice. What about you, Eric?
I wish I could kind of get like a little back into it. I have a PlayStation 4, but like I went through Red Dead Redemption 2 a couple times. Now that, I mean, what's crazy is, in really a very short time span of the history of the world, right? We went from 8 bits to video games that I believe when that came out, it was competing with like movie releases for how popular it was. And it's a very cinematic game. But anymore, I'm just like, man, I wish like I miss the old school, like AB just jump up on this guy and, he gets smashed and, he quote unquote dies. Like, just give me something simple. I don't need to watch like a 30-minute intro movie to like know the story of the game. Like, let's just get into it, And I also kind of like every time in the last couple of years, if I bought a game too, it always bothered me that it had to like download and then load. It's like, well, wait a second. I just bought this disc. Like,
yeah,
I miss the old days where you just put the cartridge or the disc in and you're like, okay, here we go. Like,
yeah.
And let's go back to that.
Whenever you had your cartridge and it wasn't working, you get it out, blow in it, put it back in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then going back to like where you like have the 2 buttons and this the joystick. Now you have a controller that has like 10 buttons on it.
Yeah.
And that still Chris, sometimes confuses me.
Yeah. And when you mentioned like you had to blow in the cartridge, it always just like, it made me think you knew how to do it for your specific console, right? Like if you went over to a friend's house and that game wasn't working, they knew how to do it for theirs. You knew how to do it for you. Yeah. It's like we knew the secret.
Yeah. Let's not forget, kind of back up a little bit on video games, but even before some of the bigger consoles came out, there were, you can buy video games to play on your computer, right? The CD-ROMs. And I just remember that there were a couple that I really got into. So Max Payne, I had to look it up to see like about what year. I think that was like in early 2000s, maybe 2000, 2001. Max Payne was a favorite of mine. That was a CD-ROM video game. I was so committed to like beating that game. And I'm sure there were probably some other ones, maybe some kind of like more cheesier, maybe like trivia type, CD-ROM video games that I probably played because I was into trivia too. But was there a time, Chris or Eric, where you guys were playing any of the PC video games?
Oh, for sure. I mean, growing up, one of the first games I ever played on PC was definitely Oregon Trail.
Oh yeah.
Oregon Trail, and then there was one that may have been even around the same time, maybe just a little after, but Doom. I'm sorry, not Doom.
Yeah.
Duke Nukem.
Duke Nukem. Yep,
Duke
I knew exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, I played that too. That was a good one.
Yes,
yeah,
that was great.
That's so awesome.
And really, just online gaming on a PC is that's a lot of people. All professional gamers are mostly playing on their PC.
Yeah, I guess they are.
The console,
yeah, all these live streamers.
Mm-hmm. I can't do it. I don't understand it.
Yeah, keyboard.
I was actually watching a documentary about the Le Mans, the 24-hour race, and I can't remember what year it was, but there was a driver that was invited to be on that team because he was a world champion in some driving video game, and I guess it was such a almost perfect simulator that they were like, well, if you can drive in this, you could drive a race car.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's insane to me. And now I think he's a professional driver. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I was like, oh my gosh, like that's crazy how that happens.
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
Yeah.
I still get excited walking into an arcade. I mean, occasionally I'll go to Kings Island and just walk into the arcade. I don't ever play anything, but just the first step walking in there, man, you're just like those other nostalgic triggers that I have,
Yeah.
All the sounds and the lights and, people yelling and, man, it's so cool.
Yeah. And I will say this, there was another one of my favorites, and they actually kind of scare me every time I play them, but the Resident Evil games.
Mm-hmm.
I had a Nintendo GameCube, which was not very popular.
I remember the GameCube.
There.
Yeah, I had that too.
But I just remember that game won awards, Resident Evil 4. I still play it to this day, and then I try to have all the lights on and everything because that game just creeps me out.
Freaky.
But that is my favorite game of all time.
You wear headphones when you play that game?
No.
Okay. I was gonna say because it probably has the you're kind of immersed in the actual game with headphones.
And like we're completely forgetting about virtual reality now. Like all this video games and VR sets,
the goggles and
what is next for video games? What could even possibly be next after virtual reality?
I've never played a virtual reality before. I've never done the.
Yeah, I've never done it either.
The goggles,
it looks really cool. I'd love to do it.
I played one. My friend had it. A work friend of mine, and where you have these arms and you have to try to like disconnect this bomb before it blows up. And I mean, it wasn't like a video game, but it was a game on the headset. But and then she also had this kind of thing, a roller coaster one, which I didn't want to do because I think it would make me sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm I don't know what it is. I could do real roller coasters, but a VR one.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah, those simulator games have been out for a while in different variations, but I remember some of the larger ones. I guess even as a kid, like, the kind that you actually get into like you sit in the game, you've got a joystick or something. But like some of my earlier memories of that would have been probably Empire Strikes Back when they put that video game out, and actually sitting in like you're sitting in the cockpit or something of an X-wing or something like that. But and then it had the speakers behind you, which sounds like. Not like that cool, but back then it definitely was, it was kind of surround sound or whatever. But I always liked that, man. I always liked when they had arcade games of the movies. I mean, that's a win right there because if it did well as a movie, chances are it's going to do pretty well as an arcade too. But the Star Wars, Indiana Jones, you guys remember playing that all on arcade?
Yeah.
I think
I never played it I never played it in the arcade, but you mentioned, playing games on a PC, and I don't remember the name of it, but I did have a Indiana Jones game for PC, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember playing any Indiana Jones, but it reminds me a little bit of Pitfall and on the Atari.
Now let's not forget. And I wanted to make sure that I brought this up in conversation, but or for this episode. But if you're around when E.T. came out on Atari, it's a little known fact that E.T. is the one that destroyed Atari 2600. That game was so terrible, and I remember getting it. E.T. is one of my all-time favorite movies, and I remember getting the video game and could not wait to play that thing. And I'm not going to bore you with the details of it, but you can look it up. But I mean, there's been documentaries put out about this video game, and the fact is, it was terrible. It was like there were parts throughout the game that you would get stuck and you could not get out of it, and you had to just restart the game, and it was so frustrating, man. But just poorly designed or something like that. But I think it ultimately was the death of the Atari 2600.
Yeah. I could see that. I never played it, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to mention. Go ahead.
I was going to say real quick. There is a great video on YouTube of Conan O'Brien playing that ET game and just absolutely trashing it. And it is, it's great comedy. I love Conan as a comedian, but when he's playing those video games and he plays other games too, and kind of pokes fun at them. So, but yeah, he definitely goes through ET, and that's how I knew about it. Cause like I said before, I didn't grow up with an Atari, and when he's playing, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is the worst game ever made.
Cool. Well, you wouldn't believe this, but let's see. Looks like Brian is back.
Hello. Oh, there's Brian.
Oh my gosh. Welcome.
Brian is back. So Brian was getting ready for Coaster Stock, as we mentioned. So Brian, are you ready for Coaster Stock?
I am never ready for Coaster Stock. There's always something to get done.
Yeah.
I heard you guys talking about the worst game ever made that I owned, the E.T. Extraterrestrial on Atari 2600.
Yeah.
Yes, unfortunately, I own that game. And yes, the worst game ever made.
It was, wasn't it? And it became, like I said, it ultimately became the death of the 2600. People just kind of gave up on everything at that point.
Yeah, definitely horrible.
It was bad.
I believe they buried a bunch of them in a landfill somewhere.
They did. Yeah. I remember seeing there's a documentary or something on one of these streaming platforms, might be on Netflix or something, but where people actually go out and try to dig up these, these video games. But yeah, go find that documentary. So Brian, yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, so Brian, since you're joining us towards the end here, will you want to mention some of your all-time favorite video games?
Oh boy. Well, first of all, it depends. Arcade wise or console?
Just video games in general.
Yeah.
Video game in general.
Yeah.
I would say my favorite would probably be this one right here. Actually, I have it on my shelf. Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man. Actually, Miss Pac-Man I like better. I like the boards a lot better. It's a toss-up between that and the original Star Wars made by Atari.
Oh, man. Yeah. That Star Wars game on Atari was pretty awesome.
And, a lot of people look at it today like, oh, my God, that's all line vector graphics and stuff like that. It's like, but it was fun. The sound. Yeah. I mean, it came out in 1980, I believe, 79 or 80. And that was the arcade game to go to anytime you went to the arcade. I mean,
I had mentioned, I remember playing Empire Strikes Back in the arcade. And I just remember the different sound bites from the movie, so you were actually part of the movie, man. It was like the coolest experience ever.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the Star Wars stuff's still popular. I mean, we have the Battlefront on PS4. I think that's what it's called, right? Star Wars Battlefront. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's one of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but I think another one it's right up there with them is Tron. It's my favorite. I was actually looking at arcade games on eBay, just going through the wish list.
Trying to remember,
yeah. There was a Tron one for sale for about $8,000.
Oh man,
yeah. I don't think the wife's gonna let me use money on that. She'd kill me.
Yeah, Tron was awesome. I remember doing you played it with someone, right? It was a 2-player game.
You could, or you play by yourself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I like the light cycle part on it. That was always fun.
No, and Brian, we mentioned, I was talking just a little while ago how we currently play on our Xboxes and Call of Duty Warzone. What are your thoughts on that game?
On Call of Duty.
I also mentioned them.
You got the bleep button ready?
I also mentioned that if anybody
it's a shit show, that's what it is.
I mentioned that if anybody listening wants to message us with their gamer tag, we can add them and play with them sometime.
Oh yeah. It's to the point. That game is so ridiculous. It's just funny. I mean, it's just what they've come up with. I mean, I think with the current version of it, they have King Kong versus Godzilla, which originally started out as a World War II fight game. I have no idea where King Kong and Godzilla came into that. Then you got, different skins on there. People are jumping around and stuff from like Saw and
Snoop Dogg.
You got Snoop Dogg in there now.
That's awesome.
It's just like, okay, we kind of jumped the shark on this game.
Yeah. It's definitely entertaining, that's for sure. Even though you can hear us getting frustrated and slamming our controllers down and everything, but it's still fun. We still do it, multiple times a week.
So many, countless other video games out there that we haven't even mentioned at all. That were just amazing in both the home video game console and the arcade. And video games, a lot of fun. Still play them today.
And real quick, before we completely go out, remember the next up, or we're going to be at Coaster Stock, so look out for content. From this point on, really, until our next episode, where we probably, I think, are going to discuss our experience at Coaster Stock. So definitely be on the lookout for all of that content in video and all that. So sorry about that, Joe. Take it away.
Yeah, you got it, man. Yep, looking forward to that. Coaster Stock is tomorrow at the time of this recording, and the next day on Saturday. And we're super excited. Can't wait to be there. So anyways, hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode of Inside Amusements. Visit us at InsideAmusements.com. You can follow us all over social media. You can like and subscribe, and of course, share with your friends. Thanks so much for being here. We will see you in the next one.